Service numbers are 572-0383 and 572-0215. Rev-Up St. Lucia, the alpha of radio.
Join the United Workers' Party this and every Thursday on Rev-Up St. Lucia 97.1 FM for an educational and informative program, Meet the Opposition. Participate in exciting discussions from 9 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. Be in the know every Thursday on Rev-Up St. Lucia 97.1 from 9 a.m. to 10:30 a.m.
Time now for Meet the Opposition, hosted by Lenard Spider Montoute. Mr. Montoute, a very good morning to you.
Good morning to you, Andre. Good morning to all our listeners, whether you're listening by radio, online, or X, Facebook, whatever, whether you're in St. Lucia or in the diaspora. A special good morning to you. And I want to say a very special good morning to my guests. I have a guest in studio with us this morning, and that is none other than the United Workers' Party candidate for Castries Southeast, Mr. Castries East, Mr. Peter Chico, and he will be, taking on the challenge in the next general elections for the UWP in that constituency. We'll talk a little bit about that, but he is here predominantly to focus on the issue of crime. As you would probably be aware, those of you who know Mr. Chico, his background has something to do with national security, given the fact that he spent many years at customs, and so we will get into it in a moment. But before I do, let me just say this is our first program since Jazz. I hope all of you had a very entertaining and safe Jazz season, so to speak. And now that we have gone through it all, I know preparations have already started for Carnival. But through it all, let us not be too distracted. They are the realities that confront us on a daily basis, and they will not go away no matter how much we dance and sing. And so while we dance and while we sing, let's be mindful of our realities in this country. And that is what I am going to hold you to this morning, some of the realities that we face, some of the realities that confront us. And I will start by just making a few statements that I personally believe in and so on. And there's a saying that, anything that starts on a bad footing will end badly. And that there is something called moral authority that has to be established from the onset. And when you look at, for example, a situation in any community, in a family, in a government, and so on, leadership has a lot to do in setting the trend and, dictating the course. In a country, it is the government, it is the leaders of the country, like the prime ministers, the ministers, the elected parliamentarians, who ought to set the trend, show the example, and set the tone for what others are supposed to do. And when they don't, they are the ones to ensure that the law is upheld and enforced, and that order and security is maintained and sustained in the country. But what happens sometimes is when you have lost your moral authority, there are times when you find yourself in a situation where you can't even talk on an issue because of the fact that you are compromised yourself. And I want to look at that briefly before we go into the substance, into the meat of our subject, and I bring my guests in. Let us look at the government of today, for example. They are the leaders of our country. Now, our government began with deceit, with lies, with bluff. Now, you may be wondering what I mean by that. The very fact that there was an arrangement between the St. Lucia Labour Party, Stephenson King and Richard Frederick, under false pretense. Okay, they never came forward and was open with you about it and say to you, well, we have an arrangement and so is the case, and give you the option to decide and to choose whether or not you are okay with it or not. They were clandestine in the way they went about it. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, that Stephenson King was on television mere days before the announcement of the general election, singing from the United Workers' Party hymn book. sitting alongside the leader of the United Workers' Party, the Honorable Alan Chasney. A couple days later, election was announced. I was in the fray. I would know if there was a fight, if there was a disagreement, if there was any uproar or anything. Nothing transpired between that time and the calling of election. But by the time the election was called, Stephenson King had metamorphosized from yellow to blue and called himself a patriot. I don't know if he knows what the meaning of patriotism is. A patriot acts in the interest of country. That was an act in his personal interest. So there was nothing patriotic about that. That was an act of deception. You do not say to people that you are going to contest an election as an independent when you know in fact that you have an accommodation, you have an arrangement with the St. Lucia Labour Party to the extent that they withheld putting in a candidate in that constituency so that their support can be behind you. Okay? The same was done in Castries Central with Richard Frederick. And the minute the election was over, Stephenson King won because, of course, he had his personal support plus the support of the St. Lucia Labour Party that facilitated his victory. Richard Frederick, of course, would have had his personal support as well, plus the support of the St. Lucia Labour Party. He won. And the minute after the results were declared, those people were brought on board and placed in the cabinet of St. Lucia. Now, if that is not deception, if that is not deceit, I want to know what is. Now, we in this country are people that are very accommodating, very facilitating of negative, deviant, what I would call behavior that is beneath the board, impropriety. We are very facilitating of it. And I say so because just look at the people we look up to in society. Generally speaking, people who have money, and it does not matter how you get your money. There are known drug dealers in this country. But of course, as from the proceeds of their drug dealing, they drive fancy cars, they have big gold chains, they can buy out bars, they have big houses and so on. And, boss so-and-so, boss and we adulate, we look up to them, we have them on a pedestal. Rather than condemn those people, rather than make those people feel ostracized in our society, we embrace them and we praise them. Another thing that happens in politics now, you know what some people said to me about Stephenson King? Oh, he's a fox. And he outfoxed you all. No, he's not a fox. He didn't outfox anybody. He was deceitful. He was a liar. That's what he is. Call things as they are. That is not an acceptable behavior for someone who we turn around and call honorable. For Philip J. Pierre to have pretended that, okay, he's not filling in a candidate, you should have come out straight up front and tell people exactly what it is that you're doing and give them the option. The jab and sack thing, the under the table dealings, that is impropriety in my books, and that ought to be condemned. Because you see, I'm tempted to say, the things you call a fox, call them a fox for doing those things, Well, at the end of the day, as a result of what you consider to be fox behavior, what is happening to us now? We are being shafted by the fox. And what is happening with the government of today is no surprise to me because the tone was set from day one. And when people practice deceit, when people practice lies, when people practice bluffs, and they get away with it, they go from bad to worse because they believe they will always and can always get away with it, and so they continue to do it. What am I talking about? So, all of a sudden, St. Lucia is surprised by what is happening with the CIP, that billions of dollars are unaccounted for. All of a sudden, St. Lucians are surprised with what is happening in GPH, where all of a sudden we take foreigners and put in their hands one of our guaranteed sources of revenue for next to nothing. In return, they get in $10 out of $12.50 for themselves. We get $1, and solid waste gets $1.50. That's a deal. Now, you have to ask yourself...
Sorry to disturb you.
Yes.
The minister was here last week, and I asked him about that.
Mm-hmm.
He said that was the same arrangement under your administration.
Okay. I'm happy you brought that up, because, Andre, honestly, I was waiting for you to bring that up. Now, he also said to you that he had the agreement and he'll bring it to you.
Yes.
I was hoping, Andre, that you'd ensure that he give it to you so you can put it in my face this morning while I'm here, because I'm here to tell you that that is a lie. Okay? There was no such agreement. There was no agreement between the United Workers' Party under Alan Chasney as the Prime Minister and GPH. There was a proposal, I suspect the very same proposal that was put to them. But Andre, just as we are criticizing that agreement now, that would have then been a proposal to us. You understand that we would never accept that.
So, sorry, so you're saying the proposal was the same thing?
I'm not sure it was exactly the same thing, but it was unacceptable. That is why the UWP did not go into any agreement. Instead, the United Workers' Party under Alan Chasney engaged the cruise lines, Carnival, MSG, there's this other one, Norwegian, and so on, and they had agreed to form a consortium, come together to develop a cruise port in Viewfort, where we could do home porting and all of those things. We did not go into any agreement. And Ernest Healy, you asked specific questions. I listened. You asked specific. So you're saying that is the same agreement that the UWP went into? He said yes.
Yes.
And he moved on quickly. You notice that, right? You're not going to do that to us. Don't try to woodwink me, especially when I know you're a liar, Andre. I am very alert to what you say, and I scrutinize what you say a lot more. Ernest Healy, Philip J. Pierre, Emma Hippolyte, Kenson Kasimi, all of those and more have proven themselves to be dishonest people. When dishonest people speak to you, you do not take them at face value. You do not just accept what they say, and you have to insist that they verify, okay, and substantiate what it is they are telling you. He cannot substantiate it. Tomorrow you have a meet the minister. If he's not the one coming, he can give the minister to give you the document. I defy him from doing so. Now, you notice I raising my voice when I say that? I can speak loud on that, Andre. I defy the St. Lucia Labour Party from bringing you, Andre, the document they told you that was the same, that we entered into an agreement with the DSH. You see, these are things you have to expose those people, because you cannot continue to do that. And they continue to do it because it has worked for them. That is how they got into office. That is how they run government. And that is how they hope to remain in office. It is not going to happen.
So you're saying what he says is an agreement was actually a proposal during your time?
Yes, and he knows the difference between a proposal and an agreement, just like you and I, Andre. Because, Andre, I can come here and ask for what I want, and tell you I want to be here, sitting here today for the opposition for the next 15 hours, and so on. But first thing you will look at me as if I'm crazy. That's not on. You have your other programs to run and so on. So what you're going to say? No, it's not agreement. Once you do not agree, it's not an agreement.
Right.
You understand? So he actually said, and you know what he said to you? GPH has even signed it. Well, Andre, I can come here with a signed document and asking you to sign it. It becomes an agreement when you sign it. You see, these are all the bluffs they try to pull on people. These are blatant, bold-faced liars. Call it as it is, call them as they are. I don't need to know any diplomacy, Andre. A spade is a spade. You, Andre, might call it a construction, a construction tool or whatever you want to say. I'm not into those vague terms, and I call it what it is. Now, they started from day one with deceit and lies. They are running the government with deceit and lies, and they hope to remain in government with deceit and lies. We have seen the light. A lot of their lies have been exposed and is being exposed, as I am doing right now, exposing Ernest Healy's lie. Okay? And we now have to know what you do with people who are deceitful, what you do with lies. First of all, there must be an element of trust between leaders and citizens. You cannot trust a liar. You cannot trust someone who is dishonest with you. And you cannot trust someone who owes it to you to report to you, but continues to operate under a veil of secrecy. Why? They come here all the time. And they go with Alan Chasney and all kind of nonsense. But the the issues of the state that is pertinent and of concern to us, they've refused to divulge details on it. Like the CIP deal with Galaxy. They refused to divulge information on it. Why did you, Ernest Hilaire, sign an agreement? Now I'm talking about agreement now. I'm talking about proposal. Sign an agreement with Galaxy that they are going to provide us with $100 million worth of projects. And in return, you're giving them passports to sell to the tune of $600 million. Now, Andre, you'll say to me, but if you want me to give you 1 hour of advertisement that is worth $100 million, you understand what I'm saying? And what I have that I can give you to sell, to pay for it. Andre, I will not agree. I mean, okay, you in business, so there must be profit. So if it's 100 million, okay, I say, well, we make a deal where you're going to, in the end, make 150 million because you're taking some risk. It's a earn and you have to make some profit, 150 million. Peter Chico might say, boy, that's a little high, whatever. You'll think that's fine. You'll be happy. If it's some other person might say, gosh, Andre should have asked more. Okay, that's in the realm of debate. But Andre, when you're giving me $100 million worth of, and I give you $600 million, how do you justify that? How? That cannot be. So, you know what Chico will be asking himself? Boy, what deal Spider has with Andre that he would give Andre an extra $500 million for himself? Is it for himself to give it, or if it's between the two of them? There are lots of questions to be answered. Now, if I cannot tell him that $500 million is for XYZ and how it is going, who is getting it, Andre is giving it to Miriam Home or whatever it is, I don't know how you can justify it, but I'm trying to, you know, and you can see I'm failing already. He has every right to do the logical thing, that is to speculate as to what exactly happened. And Andre, you can call him for all the logics you want. There's only one conclusion you can arrive at. There is something crooked that is taking place between you and I. That is why I entered that agreement with you. That agreement is not in the interest of the people. The country benefits nothing compared to what the people benefit. That is Galaxy, CIP. GPH, another classic example. You're going to give the guys our pot for $40 million, okay, for the next 40 years. And I know when you said 40 years, he quickly told you 30 years.
Yes.
The agreement says that it is for 30 years. We're giving them the option to renew, if they choose to, for another 10 years. That is 40 years. If they do not go for the 40 years because they figure they have made enough money or it's not making any sense anymore, once it is profitable, they will go for 40 years. So you can safely say you have kissed your pots goodbye for the next 40 years. Okay? And you get in the crumbs while they get in the beef. That is what is happening. Okay? So, the cruise port is going to be upgraded eventually. And remember, Galaxy is already making the $10 per passenger now. And they have not put a nail in the pot yet, which we could have been doing. So, tell me why, Andre, you're going to hand over the pot to them, and the arrangement and the deal is for the next 30 to 40 years. They are going, and remember, things as time goes by, the price will increase, you know. Of every passenger pays $12.50. Now, Slash was operating with $6.50. Now it is $12.50. They get $10. And in effect, St. Lucia gets $2.50 because what solid waste gets $1.50. You can call it St. Lucia because solid waste is working in our interest for us in St. Lucia. And the government gets, or Slasbo rather, gets $1. Now, Andre, I've never professed to be any mathematical genius. I've never claimed to have any solid background in finance or economics or anything like that. But I can tell you now, I'm not a fool. I'm not an idiot. Don't come to me with that. That does not make sense. Okay? I heard Kenny in the house saying that one of his favorite terms, and how he's so impressive how St. Lucians put it, make it make sense. Well, I'm saying here now, you cannot make it make sense because it does not make sense and it will not make sense. A question again, Andre. You tempted to ask me, so why did they do it? Your guess is as good as mine. And I know one of the things you're thinking, just like me, okay? There was some crookedness in this deal. That's the only motivation that any individual representing anybody would enter into a lopsided deal like they did. And why do you do not want to answer a question about it? Because there's a lot to hide about it. Okay? So when those guys come with all their secrets, their clandestine activities, their lies and so on, these are not the people we want to lead a country. Because you know what the average St. Lucian will do now? They'll come here, steal your thing, or come here tell you this phone is one of the best phones and this and that. Take your money, go with it, only to find out that's what the kids call it, a chono. You know, is nothing close to what it is. And you know what? They feel no remorse. They have no compunction to say, well, they feel any guilt or anything like that, because that is the standard that has been set. That is the MO in this country. That is the norm. And the leaders set the tone in any country.
Let me ask you, do you think it would be a waste of your time to have called that program last Friday when the minister was on?
Well, you know, I would want to call because because Fellow will never ask the pertinent questions that should be asked. Okay?
And there's certain things I just wouldn't know.
You wouldn't know, right?
Exactly.
But I know how it will go already.
Back and forth?
Yeah, and you know, it will sound more like, and some people will want to think like I'm attacking the guy, you have your show and all kind of things like that. But I think it'll be a good thing, Andre, that they allow, because I have challenged the opposition, when I say the opposition, not meaning the party in opposition, our opponents, to call my show, you know. And I said to my callers, I'm not taking calls now. I'm leaving the line open so that Andre can call now. You understand? Because you see, you cannot just make claims about me and I don't have an opportunity to defend myself. And I think that would be good. And you know what I will do, Andre? I'll go even a little further than what you're suggesting. I'll invite one of them. All right? To meet the opposition. you know, but they will not accept. They will not accept. And we have one topic, because we don't want to go all over the place and, you know, that kind of thing, to discuss one topic. And for now, the topics I can think of, CIP, GPH. I can think of National Lottery Authority loan, 80 million, you know, loan. I can think of security, national security. Now, I see Chico accepted the invitation to come and talk about it. I hope they would. You know, I hope his opponent would accept to talk about it, because his opponent is the minister responsible for national security. They will not. They will not. And you see, the other thing you have to understand too, you have me in your cabinet with a certain reputation, with a certain notoriety. Okay? And if my sin, for example, is that, well, boy, I'm an outlaw on the road and, you know, I drive recklessly, I'm always in accidents, I do this kind of things. You know, Andre, that is a muzzle on your government, that you cannot speak out on the subject because you are compromised. That is part of the problem with the government. And I'm not mincing words here. I'm not diluting anything here. I'm not sugarcoating anything here. When you have a person like Richard Frederick El Kwapo in your cabinet, you are severely hampered as to what you can say and where you can go. Because they have told us of his reputation. You know what I said? And I'm not listening. I don't know what Chico have to say about him. Chico is an opponent. I'm talking about they who have him in their midst, in the bosom right now, have said about him. Now, you see how weak the government is on the issue of crime? They cannot be any stronger on the issue of crime. Who are they to speak on crime? Who can they talk to on the issue of crime? They cannot. And so all the Prime Minister does is to dodge the issue and tell you he's not a police and his father was a police and all that kind of thing. And so I am building up, before I come to Chico, to say that today we have found ourselves where we are. And I am not putting all the blame on the current members of the government. We are partly to be blamed because we are facilitators of that kind of immorality and inappropriate behavior in our country. We glorify, we adulate, we put on a pedestal people who have questionable character and who have no integrity. And when you do that, that is the beginning of the breakdown of a society. In the past, there was not those sophisticated investigation and cyber this and forensic that and all of this to deal with crime, Andre. You are a member of a society. You commit certain crimes, okay? You would be roundly condemned and even ostracized by the society so that you know that is not acceptable. And the next person looking on will know that they cannot go that route. Society have a big part to play in controlling those things. So when we embrace, accept or condone a government that is behaving like this government, we are destroying our country. We are setting a bad precedence. Because what do you think our youth, the people growing up now, will do? Andre, you are more in the spotlight than the average man. So your example shines much brighter and goes much further than the insignificant person. As a leader, people emulate you. People look to you. People follow your lead. And so, there is more and more, and maybe you're not realizing it, a breakdown in law and order in this country. That is because people with deviant tendencies, people with criminal minds feel empowered when they see their likes at the top, when they see people like themselves who think like them are in leadership position. I make no bones about it. This government is bad for St. Lucia when it comes to law and order. And that, St. Lucians, if you ask me what it has to do with you, it has everything to do with your security in this country. Hence the reason why we have this rampant, outlandish, outlaw behaviors where people play loud music at any time. I mean, I've been in Grosile, 1 o'clock in the morning, guys driving by, blaring music, loud music, rattling your window pane and all that kind of thing. Nobody doesn't or says anything about it. People park anywhere. People think, guys, and I'm not being sexist, you know, but women not guilty of that. Guys just pee anywhere. You understand what I'm saying? Everybody feels they can do what they want. Go to Grosile. All the sidewalks are taken up by people building onto the sidewalk and all of that. Nobody says anything to nobody. All of those little things add to the breakdown in law and order. And so now, Andre, when you look at me too hard, you disrespect me, and I will just take a cutlass or a gun and take you out. That is the kind of country that is developing right before our very eyes. We have to take a stand. We have to do something about it. So, Chico, hear that. You're the one who came to talk about security, but I just want to tell you what I know that is taking place in this country. The government of St. Lucia assumed office in 2021. In 2021, there were 75 homicides, a record.
Correct.
Okay, a record. That was the most we had ever seen. That is when the Prime Minister started telling you he's not a police. So in other words, he accepted the responsibility as Minister of National Security, but don't look to him to do anything about national security because he's not a police. In 2022, we fared a little better with 72 homicides. In a small country like ours, that is, I mean, you talk about every life loss is what? Rhetoric, talk. But if every life loss is one too many, you have 72 the following year. After you had a record year, you would think that that government would go all out, do everything they could to stem that tide. And we had 72. And when we thought, okay, well, at least, Chico, I suspect you're a fellow that is very magnanimous, very generous. You'd say, well, at least the fellows brought it down by 3. That's what you'd probably tell me, and I would have to accept that. The following year, 2023, back to 75. Okay? Equal in the previous record. Okay? Now, when we thought that, okay, fellas, enough is enough, we have seen enough, more than enough, and like my mother used to say, that and a little bit more will be too much.
Yeah.
So you do something about it. In 2024, we had 77 homicides in this country. We're not doing too badly this year. They're giving you all kinds of figures about downplaying the numbers, you know, and not giving you the actual figures. And we know of cases where people would be chopped today, die 2 weeks later, and they do not feature.
They don't fall in the statistics.
They don't fall in the statistics and so on. But you can hide it, you can suppress it, you can do what you want with it. You cannot change the reality that we are living in a violent country. We are in a violent society where people are beginning to, some of us have already, and others are beginning to become concerned about their safety, about their lives. Okay? So, after the government has severely hampered and affected our livelihood by compounding the inflation that exists globally and making it worse here in St. Lucia with the 2.5% compounded tax, with keeping the gas price very high, with increasing the price of bread, which is a staple for 90% at least, and that's a conservative figure for St. Lucians, after making our lives difficult, they have made our lives almost worthless, because now, I remember the days when if you had come here, Andre seen you for the first time maybe in a while. Boy, you heard about that murder?
Yeah.
People don't talk about
People
this.
don't talk about murders.
That's not normal. That's just normal. That hardly makes the news. That hardly makes the news. And so that is what we have in this country today for law and order and security, national security. So, Chico, I don't know if I should let the cat out of the bag, but my understanding is that you are one of the spokesmen. Of course, I said you are one of the candidates. You are one of the spokesmen for the United Workers' Party. And I suspect, given your background, one of the subjects you speak on is national security.
Yes, that's
which entails
correct,
which entails crime. Okay? Now understand, Chico, I know and I understand, not as well as you do, that national security is not only homicides, it's not only crime. But understand me now, where I know that the ultimate is my life. If someone takes my life, that is irreversible.
Yeah.
It's still my phone, which has happened, and I got another one. I'm not saying that's good, but at least there's some redress, and they can say who stole it, they can arrest the person, I can get another phone and all of that.
Mm.
Once you're killed,
that's it.
they murder you, that is it. That is irreversible. And you're losing the person who died. And if we're lucky in that they caught the person who killed the person, that's another young person who is lost, because that person will be languishing in prison. So talk to me. What do you see, first of all? In fact, I want you to start if there's anything you wish to say before you get into it, because I like to be accommodating to my guests. But you realize I am focused here on security this morning. So whenever you're ready, I'm handing over to you now. Whenever you're ready, get into the national security. And you must also let me know how you feel about what is going on, how you see how it is going on there right now. And hopefully, before we end the program, you'll give me some hope to say to me that a United Workers' Party government that has done better in the past will do better when I vote for you.
Sorry, before
Yes,
before Mr. Chico starts, I think it'd be good to maybe give him a formal invitation and to tell us a little about himself. Because I think you're assuming that most people know.
Yes, that's what we do, Andre. And always judge everything by your own standards.
Yes.
I know Chico very well, so I didn't feel the need for an introduction. But thank you, Andre.
Yes.
Well, Andre, you're a good balancing force here,
Thank you.
So yes, Mr. Chico, and listeners, I apologize for the benefit of our listeners and viewers. First, introduce yourself, and then we'll get into it.
Well, first, I would like to thank you, Spider, for inviting me to your program Meet the Opposition. Andre, thanks for the invitation.
You're welcome, sir.
I just want to say thanks to the public for joining us today and for sharing some information with us as to what is happening in this country we're living in, our beautiful country of St. Lucia. My name is Peter Chico. I am from the Marshall area. I was born actually in Rock Hall. And Andre, remember I told you we know each other very well. We from your father used to be in the area and had property in the area, so I remember Andre from a very, very long time. I spent my life living in the constituency of Castries East. I went to the Castries Comprehensive Secondary School, first Marshall School, and then into the Castries Comprehensive Secondary School. When I graduated in 1985, I joined the St. Lucia Customs and Excise Department until I retired in August of 2022. So I am from
and you got to the top position.
Yes, I actually got to the position of acting controller of customs as of August 2020. Yes. So when I look at what is happening in St. Lucia today, the level of crime in the country today, I realized for this year the statistics said that I think there were 24 murders, and it is being spoken about that it is less than the same period of last year. I think last year at this period it was about 45, but this year it is at 24. But even before we get there and to explain what the problems are, we need to go back a few years, because our failure to put measures in place a few years ago is the result of what we live in now. And a few years ago, I remember in as far back as 2017, 2016, the government of the day was moving towards border control. Because when you look at the death tolls and the statistics on murders, 75-80% of them are actually through gun violence. The few stabbings you get, the few choppings you get, does not equate to a large number. But St. Lucia does not manufacture guns. And this is one of the issues that we have as a country that we're not addressing. We seem to be reacting to murders instead of putting measures in place to prevent those guns and from entering first, and then from killing our young people.
So before you move on, what do you mean we reacting? Explain, how do we react in your humble view?
Well, Andre, a reaction is when somebody dead, when somebody gets shot, you see persons running to investigate and cordon off and collect shells and whatnot. But if the measures were placed to prevent those individuals from coming out to do these killings, we would have been in a much better position.
So in other words, law enforcement could have prevented the gun from being in those people's hands in the first place.
There you go. You're correct. So taking preemptive
Andre,
measures.
we're talking to our customs officer then.
Taking preemptive measures really does impact the crime that we live in. And not just the crime in itself, but look at the rippling effect on crime. It impacts everything. Economic development, healthcare, employment. It impacts every single facet of our lives. So,
no, but you said so and you just move on. Now, I just want, for the benefit of my listeners, to say that when you say it impacts every facet of life, and you mentioned healthcare, when you have 4 shootings one time in one incident, 4 shootings, you can have 4 individuals with severe wounds at the emergency department in the hospital. That's chaos already, Andre.
Yeah, that is
a hectic situation. That puts a burden on our healthcare system. That puts a burden on the cost of healthcare, because you have to care for those people. You mentioned something else that it backs. Economic situation. Andre, our main source of revenue is tourism. You know, if you hearing that they're killing people on the streets of whatever country you're planning to go for a vacation on, you're going to change your mind and not go there. There are countries that issue advisories to their citizens not to go to certain places, so that can kill our industry, our main industry, tourism.
That is correct.
Okay, and even when it comes to your freedom, and I will keep mentioning it, Andre, we forgot that not too long ago, a couple of years ago, criminals put us under curfew in St. Lucia.
That is correct.
People in Viewport couldn't go out. You know, that kind of thing. So I'm just expounding on it just to explain to people what you mean by it affects every aspect.
And Mr. Chico,
yes,
sorry,
Andre.
you were talking earlier about the reaction, that we're more reactive than, proactive, okay? So let me just ask you, I mean, you've been around for a long time, especially where customs is concerned. In your view, Do you think that this has been the situation under most administrations? It's more reactive than proactive.
Well, I would say so, because successive administrations probably not taking the proactive measures. Now, one of the reasons for that, I suppose persons, ministries and departments basically fighting for the same dollar from the government. And you find resources are not available. Although I see of recent, the Prime Minister has been, funding the police department like has never happened before. But even with all that funding,
you say that's a good thing, right?
which is a good thing.
Okay.
But
Now, can I come in here? Because no. You see, the thing about it is, Chico knows that I'm a supporter of the UWP, but I'm not going to just sit there and accept anything UWP says, country.
Yeah.
Now, at the same time, Chico, I was a member of the last UWP administration. Not all governments are the same when it comes to that. And if I can speak for the last administration I was in, there were many proactive moves that were on the way that prevented the current situation that we're experiencing now to be at the level that it is. He mentioned earlier border control.
Correct. I would have come to that one.
And we commissioned the forensic lab. We recommissioned the patrol boats. I don't know what you call it, the boats that patrol out. All of those things are preventative measures that will prevent, in the first place, the situations from taking place. So all of those things.
So under this current administration, these things are not happening?
Well, we have not a beefing up of the border control of the borders, and we do nothing. Well, we don't know what has happened to border control. Let me tell you what happened. In fact, let me tell you what did not happen. Instead of telling you what did not happen, let me tell you what happened. Immediately upon assuming office, there were some dogs. Chico will tell you K9 unit, but it's dogs, police dogs, who did not know Andre Paul or Spider Montoute, that did, while they were able to detect drugs and guns. They couldn't read. So they didn't see it was Andre Paul to bypass that and let you go through. They would come and sniff out the gun that you have in your thing. They would sniff out the drugs I have in my luggage and so on. They disbanded. There were some, how do you call those ones that they use, the detecting devices?
Yeah, the handheld scanners.
Scanners. That's the word I'm looking for, the scanners. All of a sudden, Andre, scanners were not working. Whatever liquid got into scanners or fluid got into scanners and so on. Now, let me just say something to you. I am very suspicious of those kinds of things when all of a sudden those things happen. Very suspicious. So these are the things that happen when they assumed office. The border control plan that was in motion already just came to a halt and so on. These are the things that happen. And because the Minister of National, they took another measure, was that, we had to ask who is the Minister of National Security before Minister of National Security was named. That's how serious they take national security. So go ahead, Hugh.
So you said you'll be getting to border control.
Yes.
For the benefit of our listeners, including yours truly here, can you explain to us exactly what that entails?
Well, border control was basically to increase our surveillance and our preventive measures, having all the equipment and all the personnel at the front line.
Including scanners?
Including scanner. At the front line, so that whatever contraband, whether it be guns, drugs, whatever, would have been intercepted at the front line. And so it would not get outside into the commerce or out on the streets in order to create the kind of mayhem we see happening now. So, and Spider mentioned earlier, when I said that successive governments, from 2016, we saw a shift towards the implementation of border control. I was integral.
When you say a shift, meaning in a positive direction?
In a positive direction. Border control has been something that we have been talking about for many, many years. I remember way back when in the 90s, we had been talking about it, but it never really, nobody never really looked at it and basically pushed it forward. And in 2016, the push was towards the implementation of a proper border management system. And the border management unit was actually created. Personnel were employed to develop the border management. And when COVID hit, there was a disruption. And so after COVID, the border control thrust was again done. And election came, it stopped, government came in, new government came in, and they actually stopped the implementation of border control.
Why?
Well, that's questions they would have to answer. But what I could tell you about it is, in September of 2022, I was invited to a meeting. That's after the election of 2021. Yes, September of 2021. I was invited to a meeting with the Attorney General at the Attorney General's chambers, with the Attorney General and my deputy at the time, because at that time I was the acting Comptroller of Customs. So I attended the meeting with the deputy, my deputy, and at the Attorney General's chambers, and he wanted us to basically present him with a national security plan, which I had prepared. So I informed him. He wanted to know what was our position, what we were doing about all these guns and drugs coming into the country. And I said to him, well, look, I had already prepared a plan so that we could have addressed it. But the scanners, the issue we had with the scanners on the port, because I think some $500,000 was spent to repair the scanners. And just before the scanners were being used, it got waterlogged. As to how it got waterlogged, nobody can give an answer to it. But at the time when that happened, I was not part and parcel of the real setting up of the scanners. So we made a proposal to the government at the time, informing them that we needed to repair the scanners. It cost another 100 and something grand. At the time, the former Prime Minister was of the view that he will just get new scanners. So at a meeting, I mentioned to him, let's repair these scanners so we could use it in the interim. So by the time the border control comes on stream with our new airport and new port services, we would have gotten new scanners. And it was agreed. The budget was approved. The parts were sourced. And by the time the parts were sourced, again, election came, So going back to the meeting with the Attorney General, we had the K9 unit. And when I presented to the Attorney General said, the Prime Minister is very much interested in the K9 unit. So I said, okay, I would give you the plan, and it's just a matter of executing the plan. So he said, okay, he asked me to furnish him with the plan. I did that. And only to find out a few days later, I'm hearing that the K9 unit was disbanded. And I'm like, so what was the need to ask me for my plan in the first place? So.
But before you continue, can I ask, was there a reason offered for that decision to disband the K9 unit? What was the logic behind it? What was, the reason offered?
But even in addition to that, he mentioned the border security plan.
Yeah.
Right, that was also disbanded.
Yeah.
And
Right.
you don't know what was going on at the time, Mr.
No, we were not in government at the time.
No, I mean, you must have been known what's happening in the country at that time as to what reason they would have had for disbanding it.
Andre, who knows what reason this government has for anything? You ask them, they don't answer. The media ask them questions, and they either do not answer you or tell you it's not your business. I mean, I do not know. I'm asking the question because I want to know.
So from what I heard over the media that the government was apparently had an issue with the cost of the K9 unit. But I didn't get that information while I was at work, because from the time the government won the election, my marching orders were already prepared. So I heard over the media that
You mean marching orders from the
from the
government?
position of control of customs.
Okay. Mm.
So I heard over the media the reason for the disbanding of the unit is because of cost. And I felt to myself, we saw the successes that the dogs were generating. I mean, the dogs were getting guns, and the dogs were actually trained to sniff guns, drugs, and money. So these were some of the strengths of the unit.
By the way, I'm just curious, whatever happened to those dogs?
My understanding, again, I heard, I'm not too sure, I'm subjected to correction, I heard that these dogs actually are either in Jamaica or somewhere. So
I am not surprised.
So for me, that's, I mean, when I heard that they had the canine, the dog they got from the French, Tyson, you know, it made me feel a little better, especially when I saw what was happening with the crime situation we have in St. Lucia. If only we had continued that border control program, I could guarantee you with a lot of certainty that we would not be walking down that road we are walking today.
But if I can just come in here and say, Chico, I remember, you know, back then with all the actions that were being taken on the part of the United Workers' Party government, and then when this government come, they just, you know, put a lot of those things aside. I remember, apart from you talking about the need for the border control, the need for the scanners, the need for the canine unit, I remember even the police commissioner then, Mr. Milton Daisy, indicated that the dog were more than paying for themselves.
Correct, that is correct.
In terms of the successes that they had. You understand what I'm saying? So the excuse of cost, I mean, first of all, I would be the first to tell you that there's no cost too exorbitant to save a life in this country.
Correct.
Okay? But if the dogs were more than paying for the cost of caring for them, why would you make a decision like that? You understand what I'm saying? And then, you know, this is the government that said they put us first. You're not putting us first when you're putting us in danger. That's a direct action to put the lives of your people in danger. I listened to videos that came out of Beaufort during the days when they had escalated killings taking place there.
Escalated crimes.
And Andre, it was machine gun fire, you know, automatic weapons that were being fired there, you know. And these guys, even when they were not at war, they were just giving a display.
Yeah.
Were just firing, which means, you know what that means? That they have ammunition, you know. Because if you have one or two bullets, you're not going to just fire it in the air, you know. So it is really, to use the words of Kenny Anthony, frightening.
Yes, that is
what
correct.
has been allowed to happen.
That is correct. And going back again to the impact it have, the murders have on society. Just Spider mentioned a few minutes ago, if you have 4 shootings come to the emergency room, it's chaos already. Just imagine you go to the emergency room and you have not so severe injury, and the ambulance pulls up there or 2 ambulances pull up with 2 gunshot victims. They put you aside. They put you aside. So while they may try to save these 2 gunshot victims, you might very well die. So the implications
are huge.
It's widespread
and direct for us as individuals. You know?
So to just talk about murders, I mean, you're looking at other crimes like the stabbings, you're looking at rape. I mean, these are issues that we must address at a holistic level. We have to look at the impact of crime in itself and national security. We have to look at national security at a broad level. We cannot look at national security as shooting of one another on the streets. It goes beyond that.
Yes.
You know?
One thing we have to talk about, muggings.
Exactly.
Yeah, because this happens.
Exactly.
You know, but
It
what
happens.
is disturbing to Chico, I don't know if you and
I mean, sorry, at gunpoint.
Yeah.
That's what I meant.
I don't know if you and Andre would recall that the Prime Minister, who is also the Minister of National Security, said that he knows
Yes, he
who
did.
the perpetrators are. You know, he actually said those words, that he knows. So if a guy is in now, you can say you know Andre, but what can you do? You're in no position to do anything, really. I mean, you can do your little bit, but here's a man who is the Minister of Finance, the Prime Minister, and the Minister of National Security, and he knows, but he does nothing about it. All he tells you is that he's not the police.
But in all fairness, to the Prime Minister,
Yeah, I mean, how fair are you going to be to?
I mean, he may know who, but to have actually have proof is something else.
Okay, let me just say
Give
something
the
to you.
information. Share the information.
If I know who, you put that information in the hands of the experts, the people who deal with the matter, so that investigations can take place. And so that's already a lead. And besides, even if they are unable to get proof, the fact that they're on your case is a hindrance to you performing your activities. So I'm saying again, that is callous, uncaring, and a dereliction of duty on the part of Philip J. Pierre to be in the position that he is, knowing who are the people that are responsible, and he has not done anything to make the situation better.
So Andre, just to add, I don't think that all the equipment that was handed to the police helped them all the way in solving crime. I think what we need to look at the training of the police officers. We have, even at the retirement age, when you look at the retirement age, I retired from the public service at 55 years. You know, it's not that I want to go further. I'm happy to be retired. But when I think last week or so, I heard that the Prime Minister made a statement indicating that some 20-something or 40-something new recruits were being put on the street. What training do they have? You know, you train the guys in training school. I remember in the old days, you used to go through 6 months of training at the police academy. Even for customs, we used to do 6 months of training. Prior to 1991, customs used to send officers to Trinidad for training for 6 months. In 1990, when the OECS started doing their own training rather than doing training at a CARICOM level. And so the training headquarters moved to St. Lucia. Well, in 1990, there were 3 customs officers who went to St. Kitts, and it was just for 1 year. They spent 6 months in St. Kitts. I trained in 1991, and I spent 6 months undergoing customs training. But now what we see happening, first, I don't think the customs department, at least when I left, had absolutely no budget for training. Budget was cut to zero. You have, when training happens in customs, it's for like about 3 weeks, 4 weeks maximum, opposed to 6 months. So how much training can you give these officers in order for them to be sufficiently equipped with the knowledge, the experience to execute these kind of activities? So
really and truly, while the government is talking about taking action and doing things, it's a matter of tokenizing us.
yes,
They're not doing
The right
meaningful,
things,
taking meaningful measures that will make a difference.
Exactly.
And again, I ask myself why. You know, and let's not dance around the real issue, you know. Here's a government, and I say a government because it's St. Lucia Labour Party, who told us how much of a criminal a particular government minister is. And I'm not calling the name because of Andre. You know I will call him. You know I can call him, but I'm not calling the name because of Andre. Andre want me already. And you embrace that person, have that person in your cabinet. This guy comes on public television and radio and shows files and says that the police gives it to him.
Yeah.
He comes and he calls out names of individuals and say that they are involved in criminal activities. He has said publicly that he knows of this and of that and criminal activities, and so on. But yet still, he sits in cabinet being protected by the Prime Minister. You have Kenson Kazimi, of whom questions are being asked in terms of how he has come about the sudden wealth accumulation. The Prime Minister has not said a word, has not done a thing to at least shows that he's investigating the situation. You have Dr. Ernest Hilaire, who has not accounted for billions of dollars that belong to this country. The Prime Minister has not addressed that situation, nor has he made a move to ensure that he can either have Ernest Hilaire account or himself account to us about it.
Yes,
There are
that's
blatant, outright illegal activities being done by his government ministers. Okay? Like government ministers entering into agreements on financial matters that contravenes the Finance Act of St. Lucia, and nothing is being done. You know? The Prime Minister, I have to say so, who, by the way, is the Minister of National Security, is a facilitator of the situation that we are facing in this country today. Because when you are a leader, you do not use your leadership privileges and powers, okay, to cushion or protect your allies in cabinet with you. You use it to enhance the safety and security of St. Lucians, and that is not being done.
Yes, that is correct. For crime, the crime that is happening in the country, we have had over the past 2 months, we have had probably 3 plus 2 plus 2, probably like about 10 murders. I don't know if I'm not listening to the radio, but have any one of you all heard any minister or even the Prime Minister as Minister of National Security speak out on it? I don't know. I've not heard.
In fairness to them, recently when I spoke out, and there are others who spoke out about the deafening silence from the government when 3 were killed, okay, one time, and then a few days in Badney. A few days later, Wayne Girard was sent to make a statement, because I think there's some ancillary connection with the deafs. Okay, so when I say ancillary, his constituency, I think one of them have some connection with his constituency. He made a statement, a feeble little statement, and so on. But Andre, the Minister of National Security and the Prime Minister of St. Lucia had nothing to say.
Yeah.
The Attorney General had nothing to say. Minister of Justice, Home Affairs had nothing to say.
Crime Prevention.
Minister of Crime Prevention had nothing to say. There should be an outrage.
Exactly.
When things like that happen.
Exactly.
You know, a little accident, and I'm not downplaying it, as loss of life is loss of life. A little accident, an accident in Antigua. I was listening to News Spin, and they featured Gaston Brown on a trip somewhere, making a statement about that.
You get that.
That's an accident.
Other leaders.
But somebody lost their life, and he felt the need to make a statement. You had a triple murder with a 4th person clinging on to life. Not a word.
Yeah, and
like I always say, considering who the minister directly responsible for national security is, not a peep.
That's concerning. That should be of concern to every St. Lucian. So you've not heard much. I mean, if you listen to social media, you read on social media, you watch clips on social media, you hear the fire service come and say they responded to a shooting. Other than that, this is it. The persons that really matter are not coming out to say anything. So the last I heard, the Prime Minister was saying, I know everybody, I know everything, I know all those that are behind the crimes. But if you know that, why are you not saying, why are you not putting the measures in place to deal with it?
Okay, let me just say something to you. You see, we have to call things for what it is and understand we cannot allow people to do it to us. He told you, and his party told you, that Richard Frederick was a money launderer, drug dealer, etc. Did they go after him? He put him in his cabinet. That's how he deals with criminals. Okay? That is how he deals with criminals. So you now, I'm sorry to tell you, you off base when you expect Philip J. will do anything, even though he knows who the criminals are. He embraces criminals. That's what he does.
Let me just bring it
You know?
closer to the constituency that we both vying for. Well, he's the representative.
The incumbent, yeah.
So, all year's night, and this is a common occurrence in the Marshall area, you know, that area. All year's night, I was in church, at the Marshall church. And at midnight, I could not believe my ears. I mean, the rapid gunfire that was happening right in the constituency itself, you know. But you're not seeing a push, although I realize the police are doing a few more traffic checks. They're doing a few more raids into the depressed areas. But the level of gunfire that I'm hearing out there, this is not, you know, in the old days when we were growing up, if you had heard a gunshot, you know it was coming from a police officer. I mean, everybody have guns, and I am very concerned about what is happening in the constituency itself. Persons, particularly the elderly, the grown-up persons, the working class, they don't want to go. They don't want to leave their home. But broad daylight, there was a mugging in the bus stop at Shabbat, not too far from the Prime Minister's home. 11 o'clock in the morning, not too far from his home a couple of months again, somebody got shot and killed. So we're not doing what we are expected to do in order for us to curb this crime situation. And even when you provide all the equipment, you need skilled persons, you need training for those persons, you need persons with this experience that in investigations and to come in and assist. I mean, I heard a few callers to, I think it was Tim's show and also on social media, ask that the Prime Minister or the government should bury their ego and call for outside help. Andre, I think we have competent people, competent St. Lucians in this country who can be contracted, who can be called in to help quell this crime situation that we have in the country.
But, Chigo, I have to tell you, the will must exist from the top.
Yes, you must have the will.
Now, Mr. Montoute used some very strong language a while ago there concerning the Prime Minister.
I'm not diluting.
Yes. You said that he embraces criminals.
Yes, he does.
That is unfair, Mr. Montoute.
Okay, tell me what is unfair about it.
Because I'm not aware that the Prime Minister embraces criminals. If somebody is convicted or charged, convicted, and he's embracing somebody who's charged and convicted, maybe I could understand. Okay. But I'm not aware that the Prime Minister embraces criminals. So you
to believe a criminal is someone who has been, first of all, caught, charged, and convicted.
Exactly.
So the guys out there who have murdered people, they have not caught men. Most of them have not been caught. They are not criminals.
No, I'm not saying they're not criminals.
But they are referring. They are the ones I'm referring to.
I'm not saying they are not criminals. I'm making a specific point in relation to the Prime Minister.
Okay.
You're saying that he embraces criminals.
Can I ask you a question?
So if he...
Can I ask you a question? Hasn't the Prime Minister's party, the St. Lucia Labour Party, told us, including you, Andre, that Richard Frederick is a drug dealer, a money launderer, and even a murderer? Haven't they told us that?
Well, it's just...
Not well.
It's just
rhetoric. Haven't they told us that?
It's just rhetoric. It's just...
Haven't they told us that?
All the parties do the same thing. You just throw things out there.
Which parties do the same thing?
Yes.
No.
I mean, here you are making a lot of statements as well, Mr. Montoute.
I'm repeating a statement. I'm not making it.
No, I mean other statements you've made already.
Like what? No, I can substantiate it.
Like exactly what you said.
I can substantiate it. I can substantiate it.
Embracing... That's a very serious...
Okay, let me substantiate it. Let me substantiate it. The St. Lucia Labour Party, being led by Philip J. who is the Prime Minister, told us that Richard Frederick, first of all, they say is the most frightening thing that ever entered politics. that he is a money launderer, a drug dealer, and a murderer, and the same St. Lucia Labour Party, even though he was not a member of the party, and according to them did not contest the election as a member of the St. Lucia Labour Party, they handpicked him and made him a minister, put him in the cabinet in no less than the Prime Minister's office.
Right.
Isn't that an embrace?
Yes. Yeah, what I'm saying...
But that's what I said.
Yes, but Mr. Frederick has not been charged or convicted of any sort of crime. So when he makes a statement like that, he's just making a statement.
Let me say something to you. Do you know any of the murders where the perpetrator has not been caught? Pick any one of them. So the fact that he has not been caught, okay, he's not a criminal.
No. He not been charged nor convicted.
He's not a criminal.
I'm not saying no.
But if you're not saying no, you're agreeing with me.
No.
But if you're not saying no, you're agreeing with me.
There's a huge difference.
If you're not saying no, you're agreeing with me. A criminal is someone who engages in criminal activity.
If you have proof.
You don't have proof? You, Andre, don't have proof?
No, I have no proof.
You don't have proof still?
No.
Andre, you did not see the video clip where Richard Frederick assaulted a police officer at Rodney Bay. You did not see it?
Yes,
what more? You wanted to be there personally for you to have proof?
So let me ask you a question again, Andre. Yeah. So if you were charged, taken to court, and convicted for using a firearm, isn't that criminal? Remember, a firearm offense is a criminal offense. So how would you consider the person who is charged?
Okay, if the person has paid a fine, done the time, should you keep bringing that up?
Yes.
Yes. But it forms part of your record.
No, but that's not fair. That's unfair.
Let me tell you why it is fair.
I mean, this morning I was reading about the Uruguay former president, right, Mr. Majida. Okay, and he did a lot of crazy things during his time, but he became president of the country. So he did his time. Hold on. He went to prison. He did his time, and then he sought public office.
Okay, I'm not familiar.
But
with
to bring back things that have happened a long time ago.
I'm not familiar with the case you're talking about, but let's deal with a case that both of us are familiar with. Can you sit here and say to me that what we have heard of Richard Frederick, first of all, is not true, and secondly, that he's reformed? Can you tell me that?
Well, that's not for me to decide. That's for court to decide.
Well, if you're not going to decide, but you want to decide so that what I'm saying is not right?
I'm just saying, Mr. Montoute, that language is very, very strong.
Yeah.
Very strong.
Now, let me just go back to where I started. That is the kind of, and Andre, with due respect, I'm not engaged in hypocrisy, because that is the kind of tolerance, okay, that we have, facilitation that we have for deviant behavior, for criminal activity, for untoward actions, okay, for inappropriate behavior that is facilitating the perpetrators of that behavior to the extent that they can even rise to high office in this country. That, what you're doing there, is part of the problem, Andre. You have to call them out, highlight the negative behavior, and hold them accountable for it. And that is all I'm doing. That is all I'm doing. And I say to you, people like that are not deserving of the title honorable. They are not. Okay? And I make no bones about it.
You're laughing. I want to ask
Mr. Chico,
one more question.
Mr. Chico, sorry. Yes. You said something earlier that really caught my attention. You said that, okay, first of all, were you ever control of customs?
Yeah, well, I was acting as the control of customs.
Right. So you said earlier about, I don't think you used the word targeted, but you used a word to say, like, in other words, plans already being made to sort of remove you from the position. Oh, yes. So what was going on at the time that would have led to that situation?
Well, at the time, I suppose we were investigating, the department was investigating the matter against Ernest Healy with the importation of the Range Rover. And that to my mind is the reason.
Mm-hmm. So why you?
Why me in terms of?
I mean, why were you being? Because you're not the control of customs.
I was the investigator.
Oh, you were the investigator.
Yeah.
Okay.
In fact, the matter was handed over to me. It happened that we were all invited to a meeting. I was not involved in that matter at all. In 2020, we were all invited to a meeting. It was 2023? Yeah, 2020. We were invited to a meeting, I think in March of 2020. And at the meeting was to shut down the country for COVID. And we all sat down, and there were persons from, well, the government, the police, the Ministry of Health, Customs, and the reason for the meeting was to shut down the country. The Prime Minister had made a decision to close the borders, and he invited Customs because we are at the borders, and we discussed shutting down the country. The instruction was given that, look, we need to shut down the country, so we pull all our officers out of the station. I was the one who prepared the roster for the staff during the COVID period. So the responsibility again became mine to pull the officers out of the station and to shut down the country. So we discussed that, and the meeting came to an end. And it's at that point a question was asked to the comptroller. I was not involved in the matter. I knew very little about that matter. In Customs, there was a policy. You find out on a needs-to-know basis. So the previous investigators felt that there was no need for me to know. So I was left in the dark. I wasn't getting involved. And I too have a policy. If you do not want me to know, do not tell me. So if you don't tell me, I will never raise it with you. So I realized that this was being done almost secretly, between the assistant comptroller, enforcement, the comptroller and his deputies. So they never engaged me, because at the time the matter was started, I was the officer in charge of the South. I was the assistant comptroller, Southern Division. So I was actually working in Vieux-Fort. So all the time this thing was going on, I was in Vieux-Fort. I didn't know that it was going on. So when we went to that meeting, the question was asked to the comptroller, what is the situation with the investigation on the matter? And the comptroller froze. So I sat down there, and I too was waiting to hear what the situation was. And the comptroller response apparently was not favorable. So there was an exchange, and she said, well, Mr. Chico is here. Mr. Chico, and she gave me an instruction in front of everybody. You will take this file, do a review, conduct a review, and make recommendations moving forward, which is what I did. I took the file, went through the file, I read through, wrote all my recommendations, and I forwarded the file. And I went on vacation. I was actually on vacation when this thing came out in the open. My report I wrote, I submitted it to the comptroller. So from the time that thing bolted, obviously I became a target, because you heard all the things. Chico should not be a customs officer, and Chico should be fired, and they went out on a rampage, and that's how it happened. So I knew that from the time I was called in 2021, September of 2021, I knew my marching orders were already in place, because I did not, as the comptroller, I was not invited by the Attorney General. My deputy invited me to attend a meeting with the Attorney General. So the call didn't come to me. He invited me. So I went as the comptroller.
Okay, so let me just say something that both you and Andrea have forgotten. Well, from the time they handed that file to you, in Dr. Ernest Hiller's book, you were after him because you were investigating him. And
unfortunately, that's what he was saying.
And he said, upon assuming office, that he now is in a position and he has the power to go after everybody and anybody who had gone after him in the past. He said so. So if I'm happy to know you were not surprised, because he had given warning. In all fairness, he had given warning.
So, yeah. Just to add, I was summoned to a meeting to inform me that the Prime Minister and Ernest Hiller have decided that they're not going to work with you, and as a result, you will not be continuing as Comptroller of Customs. That's how deep it went.
There's a name for that, Andre. You know the name for that?
Victimization, you're going to call it?
That's correct.
So when you hear...
That's the name for it.
So when you hear, sometimes we talk about, we're not victimizing. That's a fallacy.
Judge people on what they do, not what they say. And if you judge the St. Lucia Labour Party government on what they do, well, my friend, you come last as opposed to what they say you come first. Everything is about politics to them. They have destroyed our livelihood and they are destroying our lives. And I can substantiate everything that I just said there.
Yeah.
And I want to just go back to what we were talking about earlier. Let me just get your take on that. I think I know how Mr. Montoute feels already. Somebody did something really egregious, right? The person does something really egregious. However, they are charged, right?
Yes.
Convicted, and they serve their time or pay a fine or whatever. As politicians, and say that person decides now to enter the fray, right? Do you think it is fair, right, to be bringing up the past, that person's past, all the bad things that they did? Do you think that is fair to do that?
Well, it may not necessarily be fair to do it. If you go and ask for, if that person goes to ask for a criminal record, you know it's going to come out in the record.
Yes. Why are you
right?
asking for a criminal record if the past doesn't matter?
No, I mean, it's, if you're applying for a job, Andre, if you commit a crime and you're applying for a job, say for example, you rape somebody, right? And you're applying for a job at my institution, which is a massage parlor. Just imagine, would you put yourself in my place? Would you employ you?
Yeah, I agree.
So
right.
These are things we cannot run away from.
Yes, but hold on. Sorry. But these things are done in private. When you look seeking public office, this thing is in the open, right? I'm just asking, is that a fair thing to do to somebody who's served their time already, who's reformed?
So
and it happens all the
you
time.
You have an example of that?
But I gave you one earlier.
Who and the person is reformed, you said?
No, I spoke about the Uruguayan president who just died.
Okay.
He was involved in a...
I'm not going to argue that. But in St. Lucia, we don't have a situation of any that has been reformed.
No, I mean, what I'm saying is that was extreme. He was extreme, involving guerrilla activity and so on. He served 15 years in jail.
That has happened in St. Lucia.
Yes.
Rufus Busquet was a minister of government.
Yes.
And he has a record. Okay.
Right.
And I know you're a DJ. I'm not talking about that kind of record.
He was a disc jockey.
So I'm saying to you, and I'm not saying that people do not deserve second chances either. However, the question I want to ask you is, what is the best indicator of a person's future action?
Behavior.
Behavior? How do you know behavior?
No, but you said it earlier.
How do you determine his behavior? By looking at his past actions, Andre.
No, I'm saying to you, if the person's present actions, right, do not indicate that they haven't changed,
right,
you just have to leave it alone.
Yeah, but in our case here, the person's behavior has not changed; it has gotten worse.
So, Andre, just to come back to your question, Andre, at times you may want to assist persons in reforming, given. So you will say, well, okay, that person, it's true, you committed this offense, but I will give you a break. And you will monitor them, evaluate them, and then you will probably make a decision. So there is a possibility that you may want to overlook the crime, yeah, providing that the person wants to reform. But what we see happening, whatever you do, is just go out on a show or go out and look for a job, and then your name comes back out in the public by the very same persons you're trying to defend. You are trying to say, oh, that's past, that's in the past. If we forget our past, we definitely do not know where we're going. So it's true, sometimes you have to forget it. You have to let it go, but it must always be placed in that cabinet in the back of your head, because sometimes, unless if you have gone through a total reformation, the characteristics comes out time and time.
I just find that our politicians tend to hold things against each other. Let's look at the situation with the former Governor General.
Dimple,
No. The gentleman, the
Snack.
old
Mr.
Snack. Exactly.
Exactly.
And you see how his past is still held against him up to now.
Yes.
I mean, that shouldn't be.
Yeah, well, Andre,
That shouldn't be. Why do politicians feel that they need to do that to hold on to hurts and pains, right? And if we could, when you'll win an election, you're quick to say, "Oh, let's move on now. Let's forgive and forget," and it is sort of that's what you say all the time.
yeah, but
So why don't you?
Let me ask you a question. After what Stephenson King did to the UWP, you think that everybody trusted him?
Well, I don't know about that.
Oh, you don't know about
I don't
that?
know what they're thinking.
You don't know what they're
thinking.
You don't know about that. They don't trust him.
And if I know the mentality, Mr. Montoute,
Yeah.
I'm sure you'll withhold that against him forever.
No, not about holding it for him forever, but in the realm of politics,
yeah.
it speaks to your character. Character and integrity is everything in leadership and in politics. Okay? The indication of your character that I have is your behavior, the things that you have done. And that is what guides me as to what I can expect from you. So when...
But what about being reformed, Mr. Montoute? If
Well,
I'm reformed,
okay.
that means my
There must
behavior
be
will
evidence.
change. Right,
There must be
exactly.
evidence
But
of your
yes,
reformation.
by my
Yes.
behavior.
Yes.
Right.
There must be evidence of it.
Yeah.
Show me the evidence. That's a king phrase, by the way. Show me the evidence. You know, there is none. There is none.
You're taking calls, by the way. It's 10:30.
Yes. Oh yeah. Chico, you'll not escape that. You see, you know, that's not with the minister. You know, that's with the opposition. So, Andre, could you give my listeners and
Sure.
viewers the numbers that they could call in, and we can open the lines for them to
Indeed.
to have the say for them to meet the opposition.
The fixed line is 572-9710. Fixed line 572-9710. The WhatsApp platform, it is 287-0971. WhatsApp is 287-0971. Again, the fixed line is 572-9710. WhatsApp 287-0971. You have a call.
Yes. Good morning and welcome to Meet the Opposition. Please go ahead and make your contribution.
Good morning. Hi, morning to you, Andre.
Morning.
Mr. Montoute, I am not happy about in the situation that you want to put Andre. When you talk about this, about Richard Frederick, and you want Andre to say yes.
No, I didn't want him to say yes. No.
No, but let me tell you something.
I don't want
Andre,
Andre to say yes. I'm just telling Andre. Andre is that want to stop me from saying what I'm saying. I didn't say he has to say it. You know?
Like Andre rightly said, that you all have to stop bringing up people's past and stuff. When I was 19 years, I almost committed suicide because of what people had saying about me.
Okay.
And let me tell you, bringing up that past of people, or you almost talking like if in case somebody do Richard Frederick something because he's a minister, like he have to be standing up there like a go-go and
when did I say that? When did I say that? No, when did I say that? You will never hear that from me. Let me just say something to you. Well, let me respond to what you're saying. First of all, I never said so. Secondly, I want to advise you. In fact, my advice to you is, you see the guy who killed the person the other day, the last person that was killed there, that happened in the past. Huh? So let's forget about it. You agree with me? Do you agree with me?
I'm not saying that you all must not say certain things, but sometimes, you know,
you're uncomfortable with the things that I'm saying?
Let me tell you something. I don't like voting much, you know. Once in a while I just vote, and trust me, I know for who I just vote.
So why?
But let me tell you, let me tell you something, sir. When you see people are listening to politicians, we just want to know, if in case you all come back in politics, what you all will do, what changes that you all will make, and not that always that thing.
But that's why I brought Chico here, because I'm not me that coming back in politics. So Chico that coming. So that's why he here to tell you about border control. He tell you about K9 unit, about scanner. Not me that have to tell you that. I bring the people who have the answers to tell you that.
Nonsense.
And what do the others tell you? The ones that are running the country now. You ask of them what it is they're doing in your country, and they give you any? Do they give you? No, hold on. Let me speak as well. No, let me speak as well, Miss Madam. Let me speak as well. I allow you to speak. I am asking you. Do you ask the people who are actually running the country, who are responsible for giving you answers, do you ask them the questions and do they provide you with any answers? You don't have a problem
I
with
just
that.
try, but I doesn't get the line. You see, when you see these people are on the line, I doesn't always get the line. That is why. You see, because I'm a straightforward person.
And you want me to be crooked forward? And you want me to be crooked forward, madam? I'm straightforward as well.
No, but sometimes we have to.
You straightforward, but you can't deal with straightforward people.
Let me. You have not committed no sin. You have never done nothing that people have to talk about and
they do talk about it, madam. They do talk about it. They do talk about it.
And that's the problem.
But it's not a problem. No, it's not a problem. So, Andrea, let me just say something.
Okay, caller. Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Let me tell you something. Andrea, you are a Christian, and I say so based on what I've heard you say before. Do you know that you look like a healthy fella that's going to defy the norm, right? That they say you're supposed to live 70 years. You look like a man that will live past 80. You know, and look at all that time. I'm talking about things you have done already. Do you know you have to answer for that when you reach the gates of heaven?
No, not what I'm forgiven for.
Huh?
Not what I'm forgiven for. I don't have to answer for that.
You don't have to answer for that.
That's right. So, and Mr. Montoute, when it's done to you, I don't like it either. I don't like it.
You don't like it?
Yeah, I don't like it at all. In fact, I actually, when people make those statements, I reject that. You have another call, by the way.
If it is a true statement, you cannot reject it.
Remember your situation with the kidnapping thing?
Yeah.
When I heard that, I rejected that immediately.
Because it's not true, Andre.
What I'm saying to you, I remember
because
I said to you.
If it was true, you'd reject it?
Remember what I said to you? I said to you, I don't know you to be that kind of person.
Right.
I don't know you to be that kind of person.
Right. But if you knew me to be that kind of person, it wouldn't matter.
No, of course it wouldn't matter. Of course it wouldn't matter.
But what I'm saying is things that are substantiated, Andre.
Okay.
Anyway, we have a caller. Caller, good morning. Welcome to Meet the Opposition. Welcome to Meet the Opposition.
Bonjour, Monsieur Montoute. Bonjour, André Paul. Bonjour, Chico.
Bonjour, monsieur.
Good morning, sir.
Monsieur Montoute.
Oui.
Tout ça va fait un pays là, on dit, des partis ça, les bails, puis donc, c'est ici qu'on y est. Là, yon font bail, le travail, là, yon font, c'est pour ça, pays à qu'on y est.
Ça va, oui.
Des partis ça, yon qui n'y pays à qu'on.
Ça va, oui.
Oui, moi, ça, tout ça. Les partis commencent à bail,
ça, c'est mensonge, monsieur.
Non, moi, sous la terre, moi, sous la terre,
on va connaître
on va connaître politique. Bon, all right. Bon,
on va connaître
moi, ça, gouvernement, va être mon parent. Mais moi, monsieur Montoute, et puis Chico, qui n'a pas tué personne en cette année, là. Moi,
nous pas ça pour mettre tout ça. Si Chico vient ici, écoutez-moi, si Chico vient ici pour mettre ça, moi-même, quand il dit go pour aller.
Bon, ça n'a pas monsieur Montoute. Pièce gouvernement pas encourager tout. Mais souhaitez mon gouvernement.
Ça pas vrai non plus. Ça dit là pas vrai non plus. L'année gouvernement qui a encouragé crime.
OK. C'est opinion,
ça pas opinion. Ça c'est la vérité, ça pas opinion.
Eh bien ça n'a pas monsieur Montoute. Laissez-moi éviter constamment ça éviter dans la machine en canard. Souhaitez-moi yo te ka yo dans Lucifer après parce qu'il me fait faire yo dernier facteur travail là bon parce qu'il tout bail qu'a fait ici et monde qu'a passé bizarre accident qui font bail qu'a fait en pays là monde qu'a roulé machine dans licence tout bail comment et gouvernement de la dit yo ka on a sentiment mai ils allaient pour action passer loi pour ça piger net tous les années, c'est même barrage à dire, on peut licence, on peut insurance, on pas boire, on pas boire, on pas drive. C'est pas fiché. C'est bon pays là. Yo pas ni on ga on boulot. Et pour faire ici, on peut vous s'enfler ensemble. Bon ça la boula. Mon plan vient pas c'est Chico. C'est pas exemple meilleure place parce que mon pas de temps pour la pas de temps pour on non. C'est fait ça on peut faire. C'est vous la fait pour nous c'est prendre yo papa bec bougam pas faire ça avec petit maman yo après ça parler là mais pas temps pour ça sous faire ça pays a vie bloc
André Gaïdou ça a passé quitter ça bat misère
ça a passé en pays a va passer autant on se lève pas de passer le bouchon et puis on peut passer prendre yo capable nous va mourir nous pas ça regardez maintenant la la plein pour toi tout était menti dans la route. La relation doit avoir 25 moun. Moi, je prends tout ça, moi, tout ça, moi, pour brûler dans brûler. Top là, nous aller pour manger, pareil, comment. Regardez ça, monsieur Montoute. Si bougla qui tue fouet au lion. Si on tue bougla, on termine dans la rue là. Depuis là,
Noël, nous-mêmes pas nous faire. Si un homme fait comme animaux, nous-mêmes pas nous faire comme animaux aussi. Nous ne pouvons pas être pays en bas loi avec.
Regardez-moi. Ou alors, moi, je capable de tout là. Parce que tous les mois, l'Amérique, qu'est-ce que tu as mon ça? L'Amérique, qu'est-ce que tu as mon ça?
Mais la manière pour faire, on pour mener mon l'audience, mon pour un trial, tout bail. On va pas juste tuer mon il tue mon tuer.
L'année l'autre qui a encore qui c'est moi de l'année passée. Côté un homme tue un homme, because baba is there. On dit non nan dit dans toujours. Bon, on blanc moun qui sont Australie tue un homme hein. On dit c'est mon évidence là, sans dans les bio. On dit c'est mon la cadette toilette paper, tout brush colgate, savon, bath towel bayo, allez taxer.
Well, mais d'accord, c'est pas qu'on a fait. Nous ne pouvons faire de manière qui doit être.
Tous les deux gouvernements qui l'ont fait pour nous, tous les deux gouvernements qui ont fait, chaque avait fait que l'on va prendre personne.
Yeah. Ok, bon, où ça, pour moi, merci pour l'appel là, on fait là, mais ça, je voulais dire là, ça fait pas dire tout le gouvernement, c'est même ça, pas vrai. Bon, nous allons discuter ça à l'autre. Mais merci pour l'appel là, on fait là, nous avons l'autre monde sur ligne là. Nous allons accepter l'autre monde ça. Good morning, welcome to Meet the Opposition. Please go ahead and make your contribution.
Bonjour Spider, bonjour André Paul, bonjour Monsieur Peter Chico.
Bonjour.
Good morning.
Bonjour.
Bon, Spider, deux derniers calls là, moi écoutez, moi fait décision, donc moi voulais continuer à parler en patois.
Oui.
Premier avant monsieur, il dit pour pas cotiser mon asso Richard whatever. Moi soit c'est opinion hein. Mais pour un ministre qui a couillé nos moun à un talk show, personne ne peut dire rien. Moi, je suis madame ça, c'est pour couiller Richard. Plus tard, soir, et mener même conseil ça pour Richard.
Il va y faire.
Ok, bon, l'autre bail là, moi, je voulais parler à bot. Ça, c'est show qui doit meet the minister. Bon, maintenant, à ça, au cela dit comme ça, at least deux moun camarades li. Couillé from l'autre pays, avec message Andrew Bolton li, et puis yo di manière yo ka sous line, et puis yo ka li tout bagaille à bord CIP ya. Et que m'était appuyé Andrew Paul et puis dit comme ça, qui manière gouvernement ni le monde protecter CIP mais yo pas qu'à présenter report là. So moi voulais dire, monsieur Seleno ça dit monde ça aller online, mais il pas qu'à dire ministre si là ni en provision pour ça présenter à candidat house là, à candidat Kaila. Côté à chaque question moun ni, Kaisa Mado ça ou pas qu'à faire ça. Mais il a dit si moun veut ça, ça aller online. Et que moi toi pour Ernest presque d'accord monsieur. Ça ka ouais Ernest qu'on encore là te dit, il c'est un homme qui really unlucky à la vie. Merci.
OK, merci. Ouais, c'est ça qu'on a eu rapport avec nous qu'à tolérer, c'est pour ça qu'il a continué fait. Bon, nous ne pouvons faire ça, nous passer un filtre d'intelligence nous manière à faire avec nous ni droit pour les nous demander des questions pour une réponse. Avec nous si vous pas rien pour serrer ou pas si poser qu'à faire ça il faire là pour ni toutes ces sigouer ça là avec pas qu'à répondre ces questions non.
You have another call? Yes, we do. But let me just remind our listeners the numbers. The fixed line is 572-9710, fixed line 572-9710, or WhatsApp 287-0971. WhatsApp is 287-0971. You have a call.
Good morning, caller. Welcome to Meet the Opposition. Please go ahead and make your contribution.
Good morning, Mr. Montoute, and good morning, Mr. Peter Chico, the next parliamentary rep for Castries East.
Good morning, sir.
Good
morning,
program,
sir.
and good morning, Andre.
Morning.
Andre, the statements that Mr. Montoute made, he's so on point. There are instances where this Prime Minister, Philippe Pierre, could have come down hard or set an example when it comes to criminality. And by virtue of his inaction, his virtual is indirectly endorsing and embracing criminality. When you have a government minister,
hold
but the
Andre,
Prime Minister himself has broken the law, Andre. The Prime Minister. Anyway, when you finish, I'll expound on that.
Wait for me, Mr. Montoute. Okay, say Andre, and I will move around from that, but I want to say a few things. I just want to start on that premise. Andre, if you have a relative who is engaging in criminality, and you do not chastise or condemn that relative, are you aware or do you know that you tacitly endorsing that criminality of your relative indirectly by not condoning it, condemning it?
Yes, correct.
Right.
So exactly. So
They
I'm
call that
saying,
Suti West, Governor.
Suti West in
That's
our
right.
local parliament.
As you said,
So when you have a
as you said, if you know, that's what you said. If you know.
Yeah, but there's instances where the Prime Minister Philippe knows
And
there's
we know he
criminality
knows.
in his government and he doesn't take any action. Take for example, you bailed out Ernest Sile last Friday when I called. Ernest Sile is a cancer to our politics and our governance in St. Lucia. Everywhere Ernest Sile finds himself, West Indies cricket, there's a well-known documentary from Michael Holding, a well-known West Indies ex-player, a documentary on Ernest Sile's stint as CEO of West Indies cricket. That is well documented, and there's evidence there was an audit that was commissioned by the West Indies Cricket Board on Ernest Sile. Then he went to the British, the High Commissioner in the UK under the scandal with Jufali. A man was given a passport, Andrew, and that's what the point I was trying to make last week, and the time was short. Ernest Sile gave Jufali a diplomatic passport where he never had any maritime experience. He never attended one maritime meeting, but he was given a diplomatic passport on the premise from Ernest Sile because he had legal divorce battles with his wife. When Timothy Polio, and it's well documented and there's evidence to substantiate what I'm saying here this morning, Andrew. When Timothy Polio, I remember that clearly, asked Ernest Sile on Newsmaker Live, did you give Wali Jufali a diplomatic passport? Ernest Sile said no, he lied to the people. And the evidence showed later that Wali Jufali had a diplomatic passport. Then there was a promise for some diabetic center, whatever. Where's the money for that diabetic center? I thought you would have asked Ernest Sile, Andrew, last Friday, the promise that Wali Jufali made with regards to that diabetic center. Where is the diabetic center? Almost 6 or 10 years ago, we don't know where the money went to, and he lied and tried to say, oh, it was the UWP or Alan Chastney who tried to stop the diabetic center. That's a lie. There was no plan for any diabetic center. When you look at the CIP, the law of the CIP says that you have to present annual reports every year to the Parliament of St. Lucia. You know the Labour Party government, Andrew, are you aware? Based on the CIP Act, is breaking the law. You are aware of that, Andrew?
So I've heard.
By the virtue of the fact that they're supposed to present annual reports from the CIP, and they have not done that. As we speak, the CIP audits are late, a whole year late. So the Labour Party itself is breaking the law of the country. The CIP thing is a big scandal.
Colin, you just heard me say the Prime Minister is breaking the law, You just heard me say that. Now, you talk about the CIP Act. There's also the Integrity in Public Life Act. Yeah. They spent a whole year without a Public Service Commission, breaking the law.
Exactly.
They appointed a senator. Now we're talking the Constitution now. They appointed a senator who is working for government. Again, breaking the law. That's the MO of the government, and we just they're facilitating it and endorsing it and condoning it and not saying anything about it. When I say anything about it, Andre want to pacify.
Look at the situation, Mr. Montoute. Look at Mr. Chico and Andre. Look at the situation of the Halls of Injustice. It had to take Mr. Peter Chico's brother to break the news on Newspin that the Labour Party government changed the location for the Halls of Injustice to the Ajuda site, spot. And you know how much Andre, are you aware? You know how much it will cost the taxpayer? Another $14 million. When under Alan Chastney, there was a comprehensive plan for an administrative complex where you will have the courts, where you would have the police would have their own headquarters, and there was a comprehensive plan to have where the old prisons were. That was the ideal location. And Mary Francis 2 days ago called Newspin and she said, yes, the location was ideal for having that kind of structure there. But no, politics again with the Labour Party. They did not want to continue that plan. They scrapped the plan, and it would cost the taxpayer an additional $14 million. And had it not been for Mr. Peter Chico's brother, who broke the news on Newspin, we would not even know. It was another secret deal. Look at the GPH deal. Up to now, Andre, we do not know what is in the GPH agreement. Emma boldly said, arrogantly said on the media that she had a secret meeting with the people of GPH for the Soufriere port. This government of the Labour Party, all they do is lies,
but the Prime Minister told a media worker that is not his business when he asked him the question. You know. Anyway,
another situation again. Let me just one last point, Mr. Montoute. One last point. Another situation. Do we know how much is being paid to the special prosecutor? So we paying a special prosecutor. You claim that there was malfeasance or corruption, which never existed under the last UWP administration. You hired a special prosecutor. 3 years later, nothing coming out from the special prosecutor, but you're paying a man a salary when people in the rural communities are suffering. There's no medication at the hospital, there's no beds, but you're paying so much money to a special prosecutor, and it's a hidden secret. We do not know how much is being paid to the special prosecutor.
But that's a move. That's a move to cover the lies that they told you during the campaign, caller. So to cover up that lie, they come with either another lie or another
solutions. Exactly, solutions wake up,
gimmick,
and the time will come when we have to make a serious statement and send a serious message to this wicked and corrupt Labour Party government that we're voting you out once and for all. Have a blessed weekend.
Thank you, caller. Okay, and the St. Lucian Society must demonstrate a no-tolerance attitude towards deceitful, lying, bluffing politicians. And I maintain that. Yes, Andre, do you have a caller? Yes, good morning, caller. Welcome to Meet the Opposition. Go ahead and make your contribution.
Hi, good morning. Good morning, Spider. Good morning, Mr. Chico, and good morning, Andre.
Good morning,
good morning.
First of all, an observation. Andre, I listened to both Meet the Opposition and Meet the Ministers. And I am hoping that tomorrow you take the opportunity to be as inquisitorial as you are today.
Why, fellow, we're not entertaining that.
No, well, he has to. To be fair, I know Andre has said before that he is not a journalist, but you've been on the radio long enough, and you know what's happening in the country, Andre. So tomorrow, I'm looking forward for you to be as inquisitorial as you were today with Spider and with Mr. Chico.
If you listened last week, I was inquisitorial.
No. You sometimes, Andre, you behave like a linebacker, you know.
And remember, caller, remember something important. We only have 1 hour for Meet the Minister. I can't try to dominate the people's show. We have 2 hours there, so I have time to engage Mr. Montoute.
Let's give him the question that he should ask tomorrow. Where is the agreement for GBH? That's what he should ask tomorrow.
Exactly. But anyway, my question is more to Mr. Chico.
Yes,
I would like to know, Mr. Chico, regarding that whole Rovergate scandal. Is it dead in the water, or let us suppose that the UWP gets back into power? Is that case going to be revived, or is there a statute of limitations on that case? I will listen off, but just give us a little briefing as to what's going to happen, or what should happen, in your opinion, with that whole Rovergate scandal.
Okay, my understanding is, as far as St. Lucia is concerned, the matter was withdrawn by Mr. Dr. Ernest Hilaire, and for them, the matter is over. However, I think the leader of the opposition had filed a review, a judicial review, and I think that either came up a couple of weeks ago or is to come up, and based on the result of that, then we will know what will happen. I myself have pursued a different line, a different angle of redress, and I am supposed to be attending a relating matter sometime in July. So I am hoping that all goes well and this matter gets back into the courts of St. Lucia. Because one thing I can say is everything that was done during my tenure or while I was investigating was done within the law. I was so guided by the Attorney General, the former Attorney General, as well as the Director of Public Prosecution. So I, like my Prime Minister says, I am not a lawyer. I was only the investigator. And based on the evidence that was presented to these two authorities, these two trained agencies, they led this matter to the courts. So that's what I could say until if the matter comes back out after the review, then we will see what will happen.
I think we have time for maybe two more calls. Let's take one.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, caller. Go ahead and make your contribution.
Morning,
welcome to Midday Opposition.
Yeah, I just wanted to say something because I've been living here for many years and I've noticed in all different countries that I've lived in, besides St. Lucia, it's the same thing. St. Lucia is a small country, okay? This party politics thing, as far as I'm concerned, that's my opinion, it doesn't serve us well because it creates a lot of division between the community, the people themselves. One is a Flambeau, one is a Labour. You find that they create animosity between the people. Now, what I'm saying, maybe we should review that and look for a different kind of way to handle our political system.
Any suggestions?
Because, yeah, I suggest that we put up candidates that are the most best qualified to run the different positions and put them up and let the people vote on them without a party, without a flambeau, without a red or yellow or green. Because what I noticed...
So how are you going to form the government?
Well, that's how the government's going to form. People pick the prime minister, they pick the judiciary, they pick everything. But what I'm saying is that when we get together and I listen to you on the radio and I hear you blood firing Labour, and the same thing Labour does, they blood fire.
With justification, Nicola.
Huh?
With justification, because I don't just come and say things.
No, I mean, yeah, but you see, the thing is that what I noticed since I've been living here all my life is that they do the same thing.
No, they don't do the same thing. They tell lies. No, they tell lies, I tell the truth. There's a big difference.
They all go in there and to enrich themselves, you know. That's what I noticed.
There are politicians who came out of politics, Paul. So that's not accurate. You see, the thing
there
is,
are
that's what
very few politicians.
Caller, if you can permit me to just say this, caller. That is what we do.
Right.
That is what we do to pacify the wrong deeds of some by lumping everybody in the same bracket. What you're doing there is minimizing the impact of the negatives of those who are behaving in an inappropriate way by saying that all are the same. It is not true. All are not the same. We have to highlight the wrongs of those who are doing wrong and hold them accountable for it.
Okay. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Have a blessed day.
Final call.
Our final caller. Thank you for calling. Caller, welcome to Meet the Opposition. Go ahead and make your contribution. Keep it a little brief. We have very little time left.
Good morning, Andre. Good morning, Spider and Mr. Chico.
Morning.
Good morning.
Good, Mr. Chico, question. I would like to know what are the powers of arrest in St. Lucia, and also what are the steps, if there are any, the steps to an arrest in St. Lucia. I don't know if you have that information. And I do not know if you would agree with me that it's time that I guess the police department, or whether it's the government, change certain laws, that governs policing and investigations, because I do know that in Canada and for sure, that when there is an incident and an officer or whoever goes out there to make an arrest, when that arrest happens, there is not one police officer that's assigned to that incident, right? So the incident happens, it comes to the police department, whichever police is, deals with that situation, and it's left there. So the next team who comes in deals with these cases. So basically, would you agree with me that a particular police officer should not be entitled, to handling a particular case instead of, the whole crew or anybody could be assigned to that particular case, based on conflict of interest or anything? I would listen offline, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Colin.
Sure. For an arrest procedure, I mean, as long as you impact the law, you break the law. If it is an arrestable offense, the police will intervene and the police will effect the necessary arrest. If there is a situation where somebody commits an offense and for conflict of interest purposes, that person is related to the police officer, I would suppose that the police themselves would probably make that decision not to let that person conduct that investigation on the relative. So insofar as the procedures are concerned, I think the procedures are properly articulated in the law for effecting an arrest, even as a customs officer. The level of personnel you may need to go after probably a politician or a high-ranking member of the public may differ. So I don't think, if he's a member of the same police department, I don't think they will send a constable to arrest or to investigate a senior police officer. If he's for example, I have a customs background. If you're investigating a regular importer with a importer card at the airport, at the seaport, probably the officer at the station or the investigations officer at his level, probably a junior level, could conduct that investigation. But when you have high-profile persons or high-profile matters, these matters are dealt with by more senior personnel, more experienced personnel. And I think that would have been across the board.
Yeah, so
Okay.
I think we are going to end now. I will just give you a minute, Peter, as our guest, to just wrap up if there's anything in particular you want to just add.
Sure. I just want to thank everybody for joining the program. And I just want to make two comments. A gentleman called, one of the first callers, he called and he was basically chastising you, Spider.
That's all right.
For the Mapui thing that goes on in politics. And one of the things he said, which I must highlight, he said, when you all get into power. So that caller was on point, when we get into power. So insofar as the exchange and persons going and talk about persons on bringing a person's past, like Andre mentioned, I am hoping that these things will happen, because if somebody attacks you, and as long as you're going into public life, these things will happen. Because just imagine nobody questions your character, and only to find out that you get to be the Prime Minister of St. Lucia, only to hear that you have how many murders, you have killed people, you have raped people, you have battered people. So it is something that we cannot and should not always forget. We may not necessarily bring it up and throw it in your face like we're hearing, go to the face, but it comes in as an important aspect once you go into public life, because you do not want to sell the public what you call jabbersack, So I just want to take this opportunity. I just wanted to mention that, and also to take the opportunity to call out my constituency branch, the Castries East constituency branch, for the phenomenal work that they're doing. We're doing quite a bit of work on the ground, and the objective is to bring a change not only to Castries East, but to bring a change to the development of this country, to bring some level of growth and development to this country and for the development of the people of this country.
Yeah, thank you, Chico, and let me say thanks for coming on our show today. Let me say thank you, Andre, for like I'm saying, being the devil's advocate, and I welcome it, Andre. I mean, I hope our callers don't take it to be anything personal and so on. It's healthy, it's important. That brings out the various points of view. And let me thank our listeners and our viewers, and let me thank in particular our callers. So join us next week for Meet the Opposition, where we will have another interesting and informative program. Thank you and have a good weekend.
You as well, Mr. Montoute, and thank you very much, Mr. Chico, for your presence. Thank you. Okay, you've been listening to a live broadcast of Meet the Opposition. You can watch and listen on Rev-Up St. Lucia every Thursday from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. So thank you for listening. Well, this is where I end my shift here on Rev-Up St. Lucia for today. We have Kina coming on next. She'll be with you until 3 this afternoon. From 3 is going to be Zen the DJ. He's back, folks. So Zen is back from 3 this afternoon until 6. So have yourself a great Thursday. Take care. Andre Paul wishing you a nice day. Bye-bye.